Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborn. Today, we are headed to the Rhone Valley to taste and discover the diverse and delicious wines of the Côtes du Rhône. So if you order these wines from Wine.com ahead of time, fantastic. Please go ahead, get them open, pour them into some glassware. We do have 4 wines for you today. So don't feel obligated to open all 4, but that said, these are the kind of wines you can enjoy over the next several days once opened. But you can also always come back and revisit this video on the Wine.com YouTube channel. The 4 wines that we are tasting in order are the Guigal Côte du Rhône Rosé, the Mont Redon Côte du Rhône Reserve Blanc, the Jean-Luc Colombo Les Abeilles Côte du Rhône Rouge, and the Chateau La Nerd Côte du Rhône Village Les Cassagnes. Before we introduce our guests, I want to kind of highlight that this tasting is specifically for Côte du Rhône appellation. The Côte du Rhône is within the larger Rhone Valley, but it produces nearly half of the Rhone wines. It's not relegated exactly to one place. It actually has land kind of throughout the entire Rhone Valley. And there are 23 different grape varieties that can be used to produce Côte du Rhône. So you'll see on this map, it's kind of the Côte du Rhône AOC is that kind of beige-ish color. So you can see it's kind of all throughout the valley. That's why nearly half of these wines are Côte du Rhône. These 23 different varieties that can be used mean that these are blends that we are getting. And while Grenache dominates these blends, the art of blending is so important in making great Côte du Rhône. It's like a little special recipe every year. And I love the wines for their diversity and their consistency in bringing just exceptional flavor year after year at a wonderfully affordable price. Also, the guests we have today represent some of the best wineries and estates in the Rhone Valley, each producing some of the most prestigious wines of their unique appellations. But today they're all here presenting their Côte du Rhône wines, since this is kind of the backbone of the valley. So let's introduce our guests from Guigal. We have estate manager and winemaker, Philippe Guigal. From Mont Redon, we have owner and winemaker, Pierre Fabre. And from Jean-Luc Colombo, we have winemaker Laure Colombo. And finally, from Chateau La Nerd, we have commercial director, Christophe Bristiel. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. Dive into talking about the Côte du Rhône, and especially those from your unique properties. So we do have 4 wines to get through, so I'm going to just dive right in. We are going to begin with Guigal Côte du Rhône Rosé. So Philippe, hello and welcome. It is we're grateful to have you here joining us today.
Thank you very much. Hi, Gwendolyn. Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm glad to have some time with you talking about the Côte du Rhône and Côte du Rhône Rosé more specifically.
Yes, absolutely. So first, though, before we kind of dive into this rosé and the Côte du Rhône, give us a little bit of background on the lovely and wonderful history of Guigal, kind of when it was founded and where you're located in the Rhône.
Well, the Guigal winery is an estate founded by my grandfather, the 1st of January 1946, which is an interesting time because a lot of people think that Guigal is a very old winery. Actually, it is not. I represent the 3rd generation. And I used to say that we've always counterbalanced our youth by a very strong dynamism. My 2 sources of inspiration are, of course, my grandfather and my father, that I'm very fortunate to work with every day. I had a tremendous grandfather who's vinified 67 vintages in his life. And I work every day with my dad, who celebrated 62nd vintage this year. So you can imagine that in this family of giants of winemaking, I feel like a little baby that I'm no more, unfortunately.
But you're learning every day. I mean, that's the thing. You're getting
absolutely
the best of the best. And so those hills that we saw, just kind of, because we're talking about the Côte du Rhône, but where you are located is the Northern Rhône.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm talking today from the northern part of the Rhone Valley, more specifically about the vineyard of Côte, which is the northern vineyard of the entire Rhone Valley.
Yes, and some of the best Guigal wines are produced there. Some of the best wines of the Northern Rhone are produced there by Guigal. So, but we are tasting the rosé here, and rosé is big. It's very hot on the market. People love their dry rosé, but Southern France is kind of, home base for amazing dry rosé. Why is Côte du Rhône so well suited to make incredible rosé?
Well, first of all, the Rhone Valley has got a very strong input in the background of rosé, because we have the most prestigious rosé coming historically from the Rhone. And I'm not going to talk about the Côte du Rhône rosé that we will taste together a little bit later on, but I'm going to talk about Tavel. Mm-hmm. Tavel is the only rosé AOC, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, in France that is totally dedicated to rosé, which is something very unique. And yes, we have, let's say, a lens for rosé. We have, the terroir, we have the soil, we have the climate, and we have the grapes to produce some of the best rosé in France in the Rhone Valley. So rosés represent 15% of the production of Rhone wines today, which is of course very significant. It is followed by the whites, representing 10%, and of course the reds,
which are all the rest. So, yes, and the rosé category not only has grown and improved, but so this Côte du Rhône, your wine here, not Tavel, from Côte du Rhône, what are the grape varieties you use for this wine?
When we talk about the Rhone Valley, generally speaking, not about the northern part, but about the southern part, and generally speaking, we used to say that the king grape is the Grenache grape. So of course, this Côte du Rhône rosé is Grenache based. We are talking about 70% Grenache here. There's also another grape that we enjoy very much. This second grape being the Cinsault, and we're using old vines Cinsault. So we have 20% Cinsault here, and we don't forget the Syrah, sorry. And the Syrah is very interesting in the color. This is what is going to give this beautiful pinky color to the Côte du Rhône rosé.
Yeah. Well, let's taste this wine and talk to us a little bit about the flavor profile, the aromas, the structure, and how that's kind of representative of the grapes chosen and the Côte du Rhône terroir.
When I taste this Côte du Rhône rosé, first of all, I see its color that became lighter and lighter through the years. It is true that we have adapted to the market with the Côte du Rhône rosé, so it's lighter in color than it was in the past. And people can be surprised and amazed by the aromas. We consider that Rhone wines in general and rosé in particular have beautiful aromas. It's also linked to the technique behind the rosé, and this specific rosé is what we call rosé de saignée. That is to say, we use the free run juice to produce this rosé. It's not a direct pressing like what you see in Provence, for example. So it's slightly technically different, and it's a way to have a lot of flavors, a lot of aromas. So you can smell beautiful strawberry aromas, cherry, peach, melon. Melon is interesting because you think of freshness. And I think a very important point in the rosé is that it has to be balanced and balanced through a good freshness. We enjoy rosés during the summer. And of course, it's important to have a true expression, to have pleasure with the rosé, but it has to be very refreshing as well.
Yeah, it is fresh. And I got that melon, like as soon as you said it, it was just...
Absolutely. It's then balanced by, it's fruit nuances, but, you have the delicacy, you have the elegance of a sophisticated rosé, a good mouthfeel, and a long finish, which is, of course, very interesting for the pairing with foods.
Speaking of which, this is, the acidity, but then it has that lovely texture and then that kind of lingering finish. And I know we could just drink rosé on its own, especially in the summer, but were you to put this with a meal, what would you, or appetizer or anything, what kind of food would you choose?
Yes, you've just said something very important. In France, we have culture of rosés forever. That is to say, yes, if you're on a beach in Saint-Tropez, you can have a glass of Côte rôtie, but it's very rare. You will definitely go for something, let's say, lighter and more adapted to the situation. So rosé have always been trendy in France, and we have always found a good place for the rosé during the meal. The Côte du Rhône rosé is extremely flexible. So it's a wine that you can have at the beginning of the meal as an aperitif, of course. But right now in France, we experience a very interesting Indian summer. And believe it or not, we still do barbecues. And it's just a perfect wine for barbecue. It's a simple wine. It can match extremely well with with grilled meal, with grilled chicken. So yes, it is a flexible wine and also very enjoyable.
Yes, I like to pair it with a beach. Rosé with the beach. So yes, it's one of those with either a place or a food. You can do either. And I do also love the new bottle. So the 2020s are just coming in to the country now, but you have just a very unique, beautiful bottle that it's just pleasant to look at while you enjoy. So that's stunning. So thank you so much, Philippe, for sharing this delicious rosé.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we shall move on to our white wine. This is a Côte du Rhône Blanc from Mont Redon. Bonjour, Pierre. Welcome. Great to see you.
Bonjour, Gwendolyn. Thank you for welcoming me.
Yes. So tell us a little bit first about Mont Redon and the history. I know your history is so very long, so maybe not the whole history, but just a little bit about the history and the location of your winery, and maybe about why it's called Mont Redon.
In short words, the winery has been founded by my great-grandfather in 1923. By that time, he was running other business, nothing to see with wine, but he was passionate by wine, and he wanted to produce his own wine. So he bought Mont Redon, which was 2.5 hectares of vineyard, and he bought all the surrounding land he could, and he gathered a contiguous piece of land of 186 hectares of property in one piece. And he spent the rest of his life taking off the woods and planting the vineyard because it was covered by forest at the origin. And then generation 2, my grandfather, went on planting vineyards. Then generation 3, my dad and uncle, finished, let's say, the job. And me, generation 4, took over the vineyard in July 2017. In the whole history of Mont Redon, the genuine wine, the genuine appellation is Chateau du Pape, of course. But in 1981, they decided to extend the range of wine by starting producing some Kodiron, so that we could have a wine that was early approachable. It first was red, then it became white and red. And then we had the long cellaring wine, which was Chateau du Pape. So there was kind of those two wines in the range of wine. And in 1997, we could buy a property in the Rac appellation that would insert in between the Kodiron and the Chateauneuf wines in terms of cellaring potential or complexity.
So you have a few different tiers that you can offer.
Yeah, everyone. Absolutely.
And obviously, Côte du Rhône wines are predominantly red, over 90%, obviously almost 95%, I think. But not only are the white wines so fantastic, I love Côte du Rhône whites, but they have been gaining in popularity and production. So maybe talk a little bit about the kind of that Côte du Rhône Blanc offers. What is the appeal? What's coming from those?
The big advantage with Southern Rhone is that you can play with the grapes and with blending. So it gives a lot of different options to build the profile of the wine you want to do. In this wine, we really wanted to do a wine which was very fruity, very early approachable, with a high fruit intensity, but still crisp in the palate. You don't expect southern French wines to be so fresh and so fresh in the balance and crisp in the balance, and so and to give this kind of intensity, there's a majority of Viognier in the blend, at least 60%, and in some vintages more than that. Another option we took was only do stainless steel tanks, so that there was no interruption with oak flavors. It's only natural containers with some lees contact, and that's it. And then we decided of course not to do the malolactic fermentation, but also to do the closure with screw cap, which helped in the first years or first months of bottling maturation to have this kind of reductive aspect that goes further with the fruit intensity. So these wines are very fruity within the 2 first years, and they keep their intensity.
Yeah. And that's interesting because Viognier is not often the primary grape variety in Côte du Rhône.
It's an option of blending here. It's definitely is more grape of the northern Rhone. Yeah. But for this particular wine, we decided to put a lot of in the blend.
Okay, and I love Viognier. So let's taste the wine and kind of talk us through the aromas, the flavor profile, and the structure, and how that's kind of reflects the grape varieties and those choices in the cellar.
Well, there is some, the Viognier gives some kind of dry apricot flavors, some vine peach flavors on the nose, but there also is some Roussanne and Grenache in the blend, which give the texture. And as the wine matures a little bit, then the wine gets much more textural and get this kind of spiciness that increase the complexity.
Yeah, on the nose, I get a little bit of that nuttiness, the spice. It's almost like spice-covered almonds or something, that kind of blend of that exotic spice and nuttiness. So on the palate, how would you rate? Because Viognier usually doesn't have quite as much. It's not as acidic. Like, I guess, yes, not as much acidity as many other white grapes. So tell us how that you make that work with the blend.
Well, I think the acidity comes from the early picking style, because that was brings a lift to the wine. Because the Grenache, which is blended to it, is more for the texture than for the acidity. And the Roussanne is also a more textural component of the blend. Mm-hmm. So I really bet on the earliness of the picking to bring this freshness.
Yeah, and so and it's very fresh. But how long would you let this age? I mean, because it does evolve.
I would say the youngest the better, but another 2-3 years without any problems, as it can mature a little bit, and you get an extra complexity through time. So I'm not worried. I wouldn't say it's edgeworthy as a Chateau du Pape, of course.
Right. But it does evolve. It develops a little bit of complexity in a couple of years.
Absolutely.
I love it. And all Rhone wines to me are just wonderful with food. But what do you like to pair with this particular Côte du Rhône Blanc?
Well, there are a lot of options. I like it by itself. You go in a wine bar, just waiting for your friends and having a glass by your own. That's an option. I really like to go with seafood also. It's a good match. It does an amazing job with sushis and all this Japanese food. That's unbelievable. And then we are close from the seaside here, so we like to do some grilled Mediterranean fish. So on the barbecue, it works very well too. And last option would be with fresh goat cheese, local goat cheese. They're very fresh, and it does work very well too.
Yeah. So diverse. You kind of mentioned about 5 different cuisines there. So I know. Well, this is why I love Rhone wine so much. I feel like you can drink them every season. You can, there's always something to go with so many things.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
This was delicious. Okay, so we were going to move on to our red wines. So we are coming to the Jean-Luc Colombo, Côte du Rhône. Welcome, Laure.
Bonjour, Gwendolyn.
Bonjour. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting us also.
Before we dive into the wine, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about the history and story behind Jean-Luc Colombo, your father's vision and mission when he began in Cornas.
We are pretty much young winery in the Rhone Valley, but also in France in general, because I'm just the second generation. My parents started everything from scratch 40 years ago. established in the Cornas, where you can see now the view on the village and the Rhone. Cornas is the opposite of Côte. Like Philippe said, they are in the north of the Northern Rhone. We are in the south of the Northern Rhone, so it's a bit confusing, but it's a place where we only produce Syrah, of course. My parents started 40 years ago with a small vineyard named Les Ruchers, which means the beehives, actually, which make the link with the Côtes du Rhône that we will drink later on, which is Les Abeilles, which means the bees. And little by little, they bought some vineyards in the Northern Rhone. But in the Northern Rhone, we do mostly, or only Syrah wine, and pretty much, I don't want to say Grand Cru because I don't want to offend the South, but bigger wine, big wine. And so that's why also we wanted to have some more easygoing wine that you can find and produce in the South, pretty much, in the Côtes du Rhône area.
So the Côte du Rhône, yes, and then that there's a Blanc and a Rosé, and some beautiful wines as Jean-Luc Colombo estate has kind of grown, which is lovely. So do tell us a little bit, because I love the name Les Abeilles, which as you mentioned means bees, and the Rucher, that is the hive. So, and Jean-Luc Colombo Wines does a lot regarding bee preservation. So can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so when my parents settled in Cornas, there were some beehives in the first plot they got. So basically they're starting to be a bit beekeeper and winemaker at the same time. So I follow up. I do have my own beehives in my small estates in Saint-Péret also. And we do a bit of honey. And we wanted to go a bit further, so we have kind of a bee program across the world, in France and in different countries around the world. So in France, for example, we work with L'Arbre aux Abeilles, and in the US, we work with UC Davis, California. So we support them every year in order to help them. They have a special program research on understanding what's happening to the bees collapse. So yeah, it seems to be important for us.
Yes, very good. And Côte du Rhône red. So this is the majority of the wines of the Côte du Rhône are the red wines. And while there are 23 grape varieties permitted, it's obviously rare that all 23 are used. And you have Grenache as that dominant kind of king, especially of the South. Tell us a bit about the blend here in your Côte du Rhône, Les Abeilles.
Alors, in Les Abeilles, as you know, we are Northern Rhone producer, so it's difficult when you are so much used to use Syrah, not to use a big proportion of it, even if you are making wine in the South. So it's a base, it's a Grenache base, like most of the Southern Côte du Rhône, but with a good proportion, 40% of Syrah and a little hint of Mourvèdre. So we balance with the spiciness and I think also maybe the freshness of Syrah. So it is not a very classical red Côte du Rhône, which can be sometimes a bit jammy flavor thanks to the Grenache. Here we get maybe more like spiciness, a bit of fresh raspberry, fresh strawberry, like fresh fruit more than when jammy fruit.
Yeah. Baked maybe, like rather than fresh. And that spice though, I do get the Syrah spice that comes through.
Yeah, and also all the aromatic of Syrah sometimes can be linked to licorice, violets. It's quite a floral wine.
Yep.
We don't use any oak maturation in this Côte du Rhône, so we like to enforce the fact that the Syrah brings freshness, and we want to keep this freshness on it. Yeah. So it's quite easygoing wine to drink. I always like to say, I think when my family is very sensitive to food, and food and wine is always very important for us. And each time we produce a wine or blend a wine with my dad, we always think about what food can work. And I think with the Les Abeilles Côtes du Rhône is really the kind of wine that you need to eat. It doesn't work by itself. It is made for a lot of kind of food, but it is not very alcoholic, not too strong acidity. It's really, I used to say my grandfather doesn't drink water. he only drinks wine, but that's the kind of wine that, you know, that we drink in France, like the simple wine, no pretentious.
That's okay. My husband always says he likes to drink water filtered by grapes. So.
Exactly.
It's similar, right? It's
you should meet my grandfather someday.
Yeah, they should get together, right? I get the Syrah too, like you said, of you know, the tannin structure, because it is a more structured grape and it does call out for food. We opened this wine earlier this week and did pair it. So pork with herbe de Provence, and it was perfect. So yes, it's beautiful. Do you have any favorite meals since you surround yourself with food?
It's quite diverse because it can go, I think, with traditional maybe Provence cuisine. That's my origin also from my dad from Marseille. So with like a little tuna on the grill that can work very well, but it can work also well with pork, barbecue, but a lot of diversity and cheese, of course.
Yes, of course. Everything with cheese. So yeah, this was beautiful wine. Thank you so much for sharing that and the story. And then yes, so this is your Côte du Rhône, but also if you want to go much bigger and bolder, the Jean-Luc Colombo Cornas is where to go. So thank you, Laure.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. And so finally, we shall move to the Côte du Rhône Village wine from Chateau La Nerd. Christophe, welcome. Or welcome back. You've actually hung out with us before here at Wine.com.
Hello.
And yes, so you are with another storied property. Tell us a little bit about Chateau La Nerd and a little bit of that history behind it.
Indeed, Chateau La Nerd, as you can see in this lovely picture, is one of the largest, but also one of the oldest estate in the region. The first written record of the property is from 1560. So we've been making wine in the same place for over five centuries. It's also played a very important role in the history of the region, as many of the grape varieties that are now dotted around the region at large were first experimented on the grounds of Chateau La Nerd over the centuries.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've been there. It is absolutely a stunning place. And we're tasting a Côte du Rhône village from you, the Les Cassagnes. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Côte du Rhône village differs from Côte du Rhône?
As you've shown in this picture at the beginning of the presentation, the Côte du Rhône area is very long and also very large. In the south area, it gives the entire appellation is around 75,000 acres, so it's massive. Within that, there is a part that has been singled out as a Côte du Rhône village. Like everything in France, when it comes to a wine appellation, it's first and foremost based on geography, so the place. So some of those villages were selected for the quality of their soil, their microclimates, and mostly the combination of those. And within that, you even have a title selection, which is the Côte du Rhône village, with the name of the commune, name of the place, which is the case where Les Cassagnes vineyard is planted. It's in one of the 21 villages or communes that are allowed. It's called Massif du Chaux, and that's from 75 acres down to less than 500 for Massif du Chaux. So it's really first and foremost, the idea of this Côte du Rhône is to make a Côte du Rhône village with a sense of place.
Got it. So just more specific in
That's
the
right.
land of terroir. And so for this wine, the Les Cassagnes in this vineyard, what are the grape varieties used for this blend?
So we are located in the south. Of course, our Les Cassagnes vineyard is located around 50 minutes straight north drive from the Châteauneuf-du-Pape estate. So of course, the climate is very similar. The grape varieties are also similar. And the south of the Rhône Valley, as you explained earlier, is essentially an ocean of Grenache. So the main grape for les Cassagnes de la Nerd is Grenache. It's important to note that because we make this wine just from one single vineyard, the proportions do vary vintage by vintage. But generally speaking, les Cassagnes is 60%, 60 Grenache, around 25% Syrah, 10 to 15% Mourvèdre, and a hint of Cinsault.
Okay, so very typical kind of GSM.
Absolutely, GSM as our Aussie friends would call this.
Everybody likes to copy the Côte du Rhône recipe.
That's right.
So you have them everywhere.
That's right.
Highest form of flattery is in the imitation. Well, let's taste the wine a little bit and kind of talk about how this flavor profile reflects these grapes, that blend, that typical blend, and anything else you might choose to do in the cellar.
So yes, it's important. I think when I say it's a Côte du Rhône with a sense of place, when I used to travel, and I hope to travel again very soon, when I open this bottle everywhere around the world, I feel I have a piece of this land with me. No, this is typical Provence garrigue, this environment of wild rosemary, wild thyme, oak tree, pine trees. This smells that is typical of Provence, and this is what I felt in this wine. Those spices, those delicate spices. There's a hint of pepper, but mostly those garrigue notes. This thyme, laurel, rosemary. They are all present in this wine. I think this is what first springs out of the glass, and then you have that maturity of Grenache that gives those blackberry, but also red fruit aromas that come afterwards, that are the backbone of the wine once you put it in your mouth and taste it.
Yeah, I love that. Just that very integration of all of those things together, though it's still seamless in the nose, even though they all stand out.
I think as Laure rightly pointed out earlier, sometimes you can have some a heaviness of Grenache. And I think that what is very specific about this place of Les Cassagnes is we have a vineyard which is completely surrounded by a wild green oak tree forest, which actually gives the name to this wine. Les Cassagnes is an old Provence word that means oak tree. And this gives a very special fresh microclimate. And this allows us to pick Grenache fairly late, but without having this jammy over maturity. You have a finesse of tannin, which I think really stands out in this Côte du Rhône village.
It absolutely does. The texture and this overall mouthfeel is just fantastic. What about meals? I think once we featured this wine before, and we all decided that we would just want to sit by a fire with this wine in our pajamas with a good book. But I think it's also ideal for meals. So would you have any choice?
Yeah, I think it's definitely we see this wine as a stepping stone into the universe of La Nert, and the way we make it is we want to make it there is a wine for all seasons. So right now, of course, we are at the beginning of the fall, and the hunting season started a few weeks ago, and one of the perfect pairing for Les Cassagnes de la Nerd is wild boar. We have way too many wild boars, so we need to shoot many of them. And I think
sanglier, right? The sanglier.
I think sanglier, exactly. Yeah. So sanglier, 10-hour slow cooked sanglier with Les Cassagnes de la Nerd, I think is a perfect pairing. But other time of year, other local cooking is, for example, in the spring, of course, is lamb with dotted with rosemary. I think is absolutely fabulous. Yeah. But if you guys on the other side of the ocean, we just want to have a pizza watching your Sunday football, I think it works perfectly well too.
with some wings, some spicy wings, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
We don't head out shooting sanglier wild boar here. So
well, you come over. We need some help. We're way too many.
it could be fun for all of us. Well, thank you so much, Christophe, for this wine. So we'll bring everyone back in. I mean, these wines are fantastic. They take me back to the Rhone Valley, which is one of my favorite places to visit. And I've actually realized that I have visited all of these properties. Some were over 15 years ago, but that's okay. We'll get back there. But really appreciate you coming in here, because I know that you each have these incredible, prestigious wines, but the ability to taste your craft in these Côtes du Rhône, which are much more approachable, more affordable, every day, any day kind of wine. So thank you for being here. For those of you at home, thank you. If you didn't get a chance to try the wines, this is a fantastic quattro, not trio, but 4 wines to taste through and really kind of discover the diversity and delicious wines of the Côtes du Rhône, still on Wine.com. So as well as every Côtes du Rhône wine that you can pick up. So Philippe, Pierre, Laure, and Christophe, thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Gwendolyn.
Thank you.
Glad you all got to hang out with each other a little bit too and see each other and hear about things. So bon harvest, vendage, and hope to come visit again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye. À bientôt.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine.